Ladies and gentlemen, damas y caballeros, right now, my income situation is sort of like, meh. I'm not struggling or anything, and I'm not planning on getting one of those real jobs, God forbid, but just to be real, I am not raking in the dough right now. I am making enough to survive, but only just. And if I want to continue what I'm doing right now, I have to be extremely cautious with my money. I have to manage my low income in a way that I do not have to dip into savings and start to see my account decrease. And so in this video, I want to show you exactly how I manage my money. I want to show you how I'm able to make ends meet despite not making tons of money. And I hope by showing my financial strategy, it can help low income earners out there create a more sustainable plan where you don't have to take out debt and you're not living paycheck to paycheck. So I want to start off just by telling you my income situation. Now, I'm sure at some point of you watching me, you've wondered, how much does El Augustine make? Well, income on YouTube is sort of like a roller coaster ride, where you have your good months, you have your bad months, there's a learning curve where you're trying to figure out different streams of revenue. I got my first sponsor a few videos ago, that was nice, and I'm sorry if it annoys some of you, but just to be completely frank, you cannot make it off of AdSense alone. So if you want to see a happy El Augustine, you're going to have to accept that you're going to see that every now and then. But if you averaged out how much I've made over the course of 6 months, it is about $2,500 a month after taxes. And although I have this low income, I just want to make it clear that I'm not relying on that income. I also have about $60,000 in investments and $15,000 in savings. I've been doing this for almost a year now, and I've been able to pay my bills all on YouTube income alone. I have the savings, but I have not used it since I quit my job about a year ago. So I do have a low income, but I'm not living paycheck to paycheck. My income is very variable, so I have that just in case. So now that I talked about my income, I want to tell you exactly how I organize my money. Now, the cornerstone to managing your money on a low income is making sure you properly organize it in a bank. And I believe in keeping this as simple as possible. So I'm going to walk you through exactly how I organize my money. The first thing I do is I put all my money in a single non-fee bank. I prefer just to have one single bank because I think that when you have more than one, it just makes things a little bit more complicated. And it's very important to have a no-fee bank. This is 2023. A bank should never be charging you if you have money in the bank. So I personally use Charles Schwab, and I have my checking, my savings, and my investments all in that one single location. Now, the second thing is I have a checking, a savings, and an investment account. Now, I know this is extremely obvious, but sometimes it's just good to hear obvious things out loud. So I want to break down each account and how I view and how I treat each account. So my first account is the checking account, and this is my spending money. And I try to keep this account as low as possible where it just covers my expenses, and I try to make it never go over $2,000. Now, the second account is my savings account, and this is my emergency money. And this is money in case an emergency comes up and I don't have enough in my checking account to cover it. And as I said, I never like to keep too much money in my checking account because then I'll just start to spend more because I'll confuse the saving money for spending money. And so instead, I put more money in my savings account and I do the following things. 1. Every time I get paid, I put a specific amount of money in my savings account. And 2, if my checking account has too much money, I move it over to savings. And I find it so important to have these two separate accounts because your checking account should kind of just be stable all the time where you spend money and then you get paid again and it comes back up. But your savings account should always be increasing. And my third and final account is my investment account, and this is my long-term growing money. This is money that I plan to hold on for a very long time, and I act like I don't even have it. If I need to take out money, I take it from my savings, not my investments. And those are my three different accounts. Now, the third part of my organization plan is I have a credit card that I put all my expenses on. Now, this is the most controversial part of my organization plan. Most people cannot handle a credit card and paying off the balance in full every single month. And if you're one of those people, instead just use cash or a debit card. But the reason I use a credit card is for two reasons. One, I can pay the bills just once a month. And two, I get cash back using my card. I like to do this because I can see that lump sum of how much I spent each month and just paid in full once a month. But as I said, most people cannot handle credit cards. And if you cannot handle a credit card, then you should not get a credit card. But that is my organization plan. I just make sure that every single dollar and every single penny has a home and a purpose. And one of the biggest takeaways is that I never keep my checking account too high, because if I keep it too high and I start having this extra money, then I'll start to spend more. Instead, I believe when my checking gets too high to put it in my savings account so I see my savings grow quicker, and if an emergency comes up, I have more money. I think it's much better to remove money from savings than just to keep it in checking and start to spend more money. So now that I showed you how I organize my money, I want to show you exactly how I budget my money. So now that I showed you exactly how I organize my money, because I'm on a low income, I have to have a budget. I have to know exactly where my money is going, and I have to make sure that I'm not spending more money than I'm making, or at least I'm not overspending in different areas. So now I want to walk you through exactly how I personally create a budget. So the first step is track all your expenses. The first thing I do when I create a budget is I track all my expenses. I just have a simple spreadsheet and I write down every single expense that I have so that I know exactly where my money is going. And it's important to do this because before you're able to lower your expenses, you first have to see how much money you're spending and exactly where your money is going. And if you want a free copy of this spreadsheet, click the link in my description. So the second step in creating a budget is to see if your spending is sustainable. Once you see where your money is going because you tracked all your expenses, you now need to see if this type of lifestyle is sustainable for you. And to do that, you simply need to see if you're spending more than you're making. And this can be hard and sometimes impossible to do on a low income, but you should never be spending more than you're making if you can help it. So for example, as I said, I make about $2,500 a month. In this month, I spent $2,190. And so this is sustainable because at the end of the month, I have $310 left over. You should always strive for this. You shouldn't spend more than you're making if you can help it. However, if your budget is not sustainable, then you should move on to the third step and examine your expenses. So if your budget is not sustainable and you're spending more than you're making, you need to start examining your expenses. And to do this, you first need to find wasteful spending. In wasteful spending is money that you're spending that really isn't providing you much value. And this could be consumer spending, or convenience spending, or unnecessary subscriptions. So go through your spending and see if there's any of this wasteful spending and cut it out. And the next expense that you should focus on is unnecessary spending. And these are expenses that are nice to have, but you could easily live without. And this could be too many subscriptions, eating out too much, or paying for things you don't use. If you're on a low income, you should really be limiting this type of spending. And the third thing to look for is to see if anything can be lowered. Now, certain things, if you shop around, they can be lowered. For example, car insurance, cell phone bills, or rent. If you take the time and just shop around to see if you can find better deals, you can save money for the exact same thing. For example, a couple months ago, I switched insurance companies and I ended up saving $41 a month for the exact same insurance. There are better deals out there if you take the time to find them, but this is how I personally budget. The key to successful budget is to make sure you're not spending more than you're making, and on a low income, this isn't always possible. But the least you can do is try to find ways to lower your budget. So now that we talked about this, I now want to talk about what I do when I get paid. All right, so as I said, I roughly make about $2,500 a month after taxes, and I get paid once a month. So now I want to show you exactly what I do when I get paid. So let me just begin by saying that money goes straight in my checking account. And so once it gets there, I need to start being extremely strategic with how I use it. And the first thing I do is I pay myself first. So because I tracked my spending and I created a sustainable budget, I know that I make roughly $2,500 a month and I spend roughly $2,200 a month. So that leaves me with $300 left over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pay myself first and put that $300 in a savings account, leaving $2,200 in my checking account. Maybe I'll have to spend a little bit more and withdraw that amount, but by putting it in my savings account, I'm attempting to grow my savings account over time. Now, the second thing I do when I get paid is I pay off my credit card balance. So the first bill that I pay every month is my credit card. And as I said, this can be controversial. And if you cannot handle paying off the balance in full every month, then do not get a credit card and find a different way to do it. But I put all my expenses, all the expenses that I can, on my credit card. And this is things like groceries, insurance, gas, bills, eating out, subscription, and other expenses. And this is usually $1,000 a month. So the second I get paid, the first thing I do is I pay off my credit card and bring the balance back down to zero. And that leaves me $1,200 left in my checking account. And finally, the third thing I do when I get paid is I pay the non-credit card expenses. Now, there are certain expenses that I cannot put on my credit card. So normally I just set them up to auto pay and they directly take out of my checking account. And these are expenses like my rent for $700, my utilities for $100. Because I'm self-employed, my health insurance for $200. And so now I have $200 left in my checking account. And I never keep my checking account at zero, but I always make sure that after I pay all my bills and all my expenses, there's still a little bit left in my checking account until I get paid again. And if the checking account gets too high, then I start to move some over to savings. But this is what I do when I get paid. Basically, I just pay all my bills and keep it as simple as I possibly can so I don't overlook anything. So now I want to finish this video just by summarizing how I manage my money on a low income. So let's quickly review how I manage my money on a low income. 1, I organize my money in a simple way. 2, I create a sustainable budget where I'm spending less than I'm making. And 3, I have a simple routine to pay my bills every month. And that's how I personally manage my money on a low income. So now, very quickly, I kind of just want to do this lightning round of pieces of advice I would give people on a low income. 1, don't use low income as an excuse to not create a plan. Many people on a low income don't even attempt to make a plan because they think that their financial situation is hopeless. However, a plan can only help you. 2, focus on examining every single expense. When you track all your expenses, it's important to not overlook the tiny expenses because every single dollar adds up. And if you can focus on cutting out even these little expenses, it can help you create a more sustainable budget. 3, keep it simple. So many people have multiple bank accounts, multiple credit cards, and bills coming from all different directions. But when you keep things simple, you're minimizing the things that can go wrong, the things that you can overlook. And so that is how I manage my money, how I budget my money on a low income. I understand that my situation is probably a lot different from yours, but this strategy has worked for me. And I think that if you implement some of these ideas in your life and just create a budget and try to be more organized with money, you can make living on a low income more manageable. And regardless of whatever financial situation you're in, if you just take steps today and at least just try to create a budget and organize your money, you can be in a better financial position. So I hope this video helped. I'm thinking about making more of these step-by-step type videos. So let me know if you like this format of videos, and if there's any specific video that you want, let me know in the comments, and if I think it's marketable, then I'll make it. And with that, muchas gracias, que tengan un buen día. Video 122, nos vemos, chicos.